From the silence of the night comes the hush of the dawn. From the hush of the dawn comes the song of the birds. From the song of the birds does the world wake up. Let us wake up too, here in this place of silence and sounds, here with our memories and hopes, our stories and our yearnings, our loneliness and our love. In worship, do we join in a common search for meaning, vision, and connection? Let us be glad for the company. Let us begin. Our opening hymn is number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me. And I wanted to invite any of the young people that are here today to literally come sing a song with me. If you'd like to come up and sing with me, you're most welcome to sing with me and Chris up here. You can bring your parent if you want to. Okay, so for everybody, let's stand and sing 346, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Good morning and welcome to First Parish in Milton. My name is Chris Clifford and I am a member of the Worship Committee. We are so glad that you've chosen to be here with us this morning, to join us virtually or in person. Your presence here on Sunday morning enriches worship for everyone. This sanctuary is made holy by your presence. If you're joining us for the first time, a special welcome. You'll find information about First Parish in your pew. One of the greeters or I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. And any of us would be happy to walk you to social hour after the service. The work of living our faith is done both in and out of worship. So I would like to call your attention to the announcements that are printed in the order of worship. Also, please take a look at the link, which hopefully everyone is receiving on a regular basis. And if you don't get it, if you leave us your email address, we will make sure that you are included on that list. One thing of note, on October the 30th, we will have a remembrance of our beloved dead. So if you gather pictures of those loved ones who have passed, friends, family, or pets, please start gathering them and bring them with you on the 30th. Now let's take a few minutes to greet one another and extend a warm welcome to old friends and new. Of course, we still need to be COVID safe, so please stay in your seats and greet your friends as enthusiastically as you would like, but stay where you are. And for those folks on Zoom, please show your faces and go to the gallery view so that you can say hello to the others out on Zoom land. So,
Hi.
Hi, good to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Pat.
Hi, Allison. How you
Hi,
doing?
Pat.
Charlie, hi, Ruth. How you doing? Hi.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you, even though we can't see you.
Hi, India. How you doing?
Good. Some people are hiding.
Still in their pajamas.
Right. But they haven't shaved.
Charlie, you guys up in Maine?
We are.
Oh, yeah. We saw the naughty pine behind you there.
Yeah.
With your accent, I was like, for a second, I was like, why is it naughty?
Are the colors in full bloom in
please take a
Maine?
moment to make sure
Yeah.
your cell phone
Yes.
is silenced.
Yeah. It's glorious up there.
Now is the moment when we can focus on being here.
Okay, back we
When
go.
we can choose to connect with ourselves and the divine. When we can choose to just be present. This morning, Jonathan Felice is going to light the chalice for us.
Flame of our faith, call us into the community of love and justice this morning and every morning. It's harder than it looks.
Everyone knows what comes next, right? Now, please join me in the call to worship. We gather to celebrate the sacred within and among us. We come to seek spiritual growth and understanding. We strive to practice acceptance, forgiveness, and love. Together, we work to build a world with justice and compassion. Come, let us gather together.
Our worship theme for the month of October is courage. And I thought of someone that I have found had a lot of courage, would be a good person to talk about, and that is Ruby Bridges. I did find this book that Ruby Bridges wrote called Through My Eyes in Reverend Lisa's ministerial study, which you could borrow if you'd like. I wanted to know, especially from young people here, if Bridges is a name that you know. And just raise your hand if Ruby Bridges is a name that you know. Quite a few of you do. Actually, I think everyone. So maybe as I tell the story of Ruby, you can help me with it and add things that you think are important. So I'll begin, and then, especially any of the young people or anybody really, if you have something you really want to say, raise your hand, and together we'll tell the story about Ruby. So she was born in 1954 in Mississippi, but when she was 4 years old, she moved to New Orleans in Louisiana. The year she was born was the year that the Supreme Court, the biggest court in our country, decided that all students of all different skin colors should be learning together, because at that time, as you may know, that really, really was not the case, especially in some parts of the country, including where Ruby lived in Louisiana. When she was 6 years old, she went to first grade, like sixth graders do, except in her case, she was the only person who wasn't white that went to the France Elementary School in New Orleans. Now I'm going to stop and say if anybody wants to add something about that very first day that Ruby went to school as a first grader in that school. Does anybody know what happened to her today? Come over and give the mic if you don't mind, so everybody can hear what it is that you know about Ruby's story.
Well, I know that the day that happened, I'm pretty sure that the teacher wasn't happy with her. Ever. The teacher didn't want to have a black student and wasn't very nice to her.
So I find that really interesting because the story that I know is really different from that. So that's okay that we have different stories, and in fact, there are different understandings of things that happen in history. So we'll go on, and I'm going to ask if somebody else knows something. Were you raising your hand, Elisa, or were you just waving at me? Yeah. What I know about that first day, and see if this matches what you know, Leona, was that there was a lot of people who did want her to go to school there, that they wanted the schools to be separated. So she had to go to school protected by federal marshals. So they came to her home, picked her up the first day, her and her mom, and drove her to school. And then when she got there, there were a lot of angry people that were not happy with the situation of black students and white students going to school together. And they yelled at her, and they said bad and nasty things. And that was true every day of Ruby Bridges' first grade. What I know about her teacher actually is, number one, her name was Barbara Henry, and she was from? Was she from Milton? Oh, in the books it says Boston, but you've got again, the true story. That is really cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. So she was a young woman when she moved with her husband there, and she got invited to be the teacher of Ruby. And this is a story I heard, she said, absolutely, I will do that. I would be honored to do that. And all of Ruby's first year, it was only her and Mrs. Henry, as she called her, in the classroom together. And I'm going to read one thing, if I can find it quickly in here, that Mrs. Henry said about what it was like to teach Ruby, page 23. She said, there was a certain shyness about Ruby. She would appear at the door of our room in the morning and walk in slowly, taking little steps. I would always greet her with a compliment about how nicely she was dressed to help make her feel special, as she was, and to make her feel more welcome and comfortable. We would hug, and then we would sit down side by side. We had our corner of the room, and it was cozy. I never sat in front of the classroom apart from her. If I went to the blackboard, she was always right beside there with me. I grew to love Ruby and to be awed by her. It was an ugly world outside, But I tried to make our world together as normal as possible. Neither one of us ever missed a day. It was important to keep going. So they did form a bond, and Ruby's second grade, her year of second grade, she went back to the same school. It was a little bit better. There wasn't as much hostility outside, but she got to school, and her teacher was not there anymore. She had gone back to Boston, and that was a big loss for her. Is there any, I'm going to ask a question in a minute, but is there anything else about this story of Ruby Bridges that anybody knows and it means something to them, that you identify with, that you would like to add?
Didn't she pray for the people who were protesting against her being there? Didn't she stop at the door? And they said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm praying for them because they know not what they think or what they're doing," or something.
Thank you for adding that. Did people hear that? Yeah, people noticed, she was supported by Robert Coles, a famous psychiatrist, and he noticed that she was mouthing words as she walked in and going through this gauntlet of hatred. And he said, "What are you saying?" And he said, "Well, I'm praying for them that their hearts will be softened." That's a great thing to add. We could go on forever about Ruby Bridges, and we won't, because this story will end, and you have to go off to do yoga. But I did want to say, the question for me is, how are people able to be brave? And I wondered if anybody would think about that, if we would think about that, and either from Ruby's story to think about what helped her be brave, or in your own life, what has helped you to be brave. And if you're brave enough to share that, just raise your hand.
Picturing being on the other side of it.
It's a good strategy.
I've found it easy to be brave when I know that I'm right morally.
The strength of conviction. That goes a long way. Is there a third thing that anybody would like to say? Then I'm going to end. Thank you. Oh, Elise has something to say. I'm going to run. I look at my mom. We can find out next week. Thank you. You know, I think that sometimes we think that somebody like Ruby is really, really different from us, and in many ways, of course, she is. But I also want to think that life comes at us, you know, and when she was 6, that was the invitation and the opportunity and the challenge that she had, was to go, you know, supported by her parents, by her teacher, by other white families who had their children go to school there. A few did, but mostly she went out of her own strength. And life will give us and does give us things. And so, you know, she's become famous, and who knows what actions that we will take that are courageous, that may or may not make us famous, but that's not the point, right? It's about, you know, being courageous when we can and helping each other be courageous, because we all need that. Okay, thank you for that, for taking part of that story with me, and off you go to religious exploration. In our very busy lives, in our very noisy world, it is a gift to have a moment of stillness. Let's take that time now, beginning and ending with the sound of the chime.
By Victoria Statford, The Small Work in the Great Work. Matthew Fox writes somewhere of the small work within the great work. He says, place your life, your little life, and love, daily days, and earnest efforts as a solitary person within the larger life, the larger love that some call holy, some call God, some call history, and others simply call larger than themselves. Like everybody else, we are doing small work within the great work of creation. And thus do we aid and abet it in unfolding. As we stand, we are on our one little plots of ground where we are maybe called to stand, though who knows what called means. In our congregations, classrooms, offices, factories, in fields of lettuce and apricots, in hospitals, in prisons, sometimes on both sides at various times of the gates, and in streets, in community groups. And it is sacred ground if we would honor it, if we would bring to it a blessing of the sacrifice and risk. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are sometimes narrower, nor the stalwart gates, boring, common sense gates, not the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill, angry hinges. People can't hear us there. They cannot pass through. Nor the cheerful, flimsy garden gates of everything is going to be all right, but a different, sometimes lonely place, the place of truth-telling about our own soul first of all and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you see the world, both as it is and as it could be and as it will be, the place from which you glimpse not only the struggle, but the joy in the struggle. And we stand there, beckoning and calling, telling people what we're seeing, and asking them what they see.
About 5 years before Ruby Bridges walked into her elementary school in New Orleans, protected by U.S. Marshals, Rosa Parks boarded a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, took her seat in the front of the bus, and refused to move to the back. Two powerful stories of courage etched into American history of civil rights. I grew up with both of those stories. You probably did too. And my relationship with those stories has evolved over time, as has my understanding of the civil rights struggle and what it means to share in that struggle as a white person. Many moons ago in social work school, I heard an interesting take on the story of Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus strike. One of my social work professors described her refusal to move to the back of the bus as a simultaneous act of resistance and fatigue. She had worked a long day and was tired. She'd had enough of this discrimination, and she was angry. And no, she simply wasn't going to move. In my 20s then, I of course knew of Rosa Parks, but never thought about it that way, that this huge event in the civil rights history was born from a moment that held both weariness and bravery. I liked that insight, as it suggested that any one person's bravery could unleash more goodness, more bravery, more kindness. In fact, it usually does. Sometimes we see what arises. Often we don't. Not too many years later, I mentioned to a friend who is a community organizer how inspired I was by this aspect of the Rosa Parks story. He smiled and said, "Well, you can believe that if you want, and it is a story out there. But the actual story is much different. Rosa Parks may have been tired, but she was ready for the moment. She had been trained in nonviolent action and was part of a movement that involved many, many others. She was a recognized leader and well-respected. As one person said when they heard she'd been arrested, they're messing with the wrong one now. As a leader in the NAACP, she would have known that the idea of a bus boycott was being considered. She would have known that this law was being challenged in other parts of the South. And she would have known that she and her husband would be supported legally and financially if she was arrested, and that even as she was ready for the moment, so too was the civil rights movement. Once Rosa took her seat, once she refused to move, a whole coordinated response began, and thus was born the Montgomery bus boycott. She was not alone. So much for my story of a tired, brave woman who one day simply said, "No, I won't move." And of course, the true story, or perhaps better said, the truer story, which is the latter, is very inspiring. Rosa Parks struck a match that day, which lit a fire that had been smoldering for decades. Rosa Parks, the disciplined, courageous, skillful, tired, and tireless fighter, is revered not just for her actions on that day, but for a life of work in civil rights before and after that date. Still, I want to hold a spot open for the spontaneous and seemingly small actions of bravery, goodness, and kindness that do, in fact, move the world forward. As always, it's not one or the other, either or. Rosa, the tired woman who had enough and said no, versus Rosa, the skilled and determined organizer. Our individual acts of bravery and goodness versus coordinated campaigns for justice of the common good. I'm not sure there's really a need for a dividing line that separates the small, seemingly small at times and spontaneous from the organized and large. It all matters. Everything matters. It all counts. It is the small work in the great work, to quote both Matthew Fox and Victoria Safford. Paul Razor, now a retired Unitarian Universalist theologian, teacher, and writer, has a metaphor for this. Imagine a mound of sand, and then imagine adding to it grains of sand, one at a time. As the grains of sand are added, the mound peaks higher and higher till suddenly the weight of one more grain is added, and the whole mound shifts to a new formation, a new reality. Our lives are comprised of moment after ordinary moment. We have a continual series of chances to respond to the present moment in a way that adds to the good, our grain of sand, if you will. At no point do we know if our solitary grain of sand will be the one that just happens to change things in a big way, shift things to a new formation. And in some ways, it doesn't matter if our grain is the one that is the tipping point. For every act towards the good is good unto itself, and each one in some way builds upon the other. So in truth, no one act or grain of sand is more important than any other, for the latter grain is in debt to the former. In all matters, everything counts, in all places and times. A friend of mine worked for an international relief organization in Bosnia in 1992 at the start of the Bosnian War. She was captured by the Serbian army and held for 10 days, during which time she witnessed and experienced more violence and trauma than is possible to comprehend for any of us who have not been through anything like that. With her permission, I share this story. Once captured, she was forced to watch as Serbian soldiers came into a village and rounded up everyone, men, women, and children, into the village square to shoot them. There was great fear, shouting, screaming, chaos, disorder, as the villages huddled together. My friend remembered seeing one man in the midst of the bedlam pick up a young boy about 4 years old who was running around alone and scared, and holding this child in his arm, comforting the little boy, giving him a place of consolation in the midst of the nightmare. My friend fixed her gaze on the man and his tender attention to the boy, as it seemed the only sign of humanity amidst the hell. The man and boy perished, as did everyone else from the village that day. My friend says the memory of the man's dignity and compassion gave her strength during her subsequent days of captivity. It gave her some comfort that the young boy was held by someone who cared for him as he died. And she hoped that perhaps the man himself, holding and carrying another human being as he was, found some measure of human connection apart from the madness. She held on to that memory like a lifeline, not only while imprisoned in Serbia, but upon return to the U.S., where for a couple of years she really wasn't sure she wanted to live anymore. So brutal was the trauma she experienced. I think that the memory of the man's kindness to the boy helped keep her alive. It was the evidence that she needed of human goodness, amidst great evil. It was an image that held for her the possibility of choosing love and dignity in impossible circumstances. So, a small act, yes. A man picks up a scared child and holds him. A seemingly small and futile act, yes, with great power. Her story, his story, the man's, brings to mind these words of Adrian Rich's. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Sometimes we reconstitute the world as part of large social justice movements. Sometimes as leaders who risk arrest. Sometimes as children who simply do as their parents tell them and go to school. Sometimes, hopefully many times, we respond with love to whatever is in our life, our ordinary, beautiful, complicated lives. And in so doing, add our grain of sand to the mound, and sometimes, without even knowing it, ours is what shifts the mound, reconstitutes the world. Later in her life, Rosa Parks said that when she decided that early winter morning that she would not be moved, I knew I had the strength of my ancestors with me. What did she mean? What might we mean if we felt that and said that when we took a big risk? I think it means that all the love and bravery of our ancestors, all their acts for the good, are still alive in some way. Alive in those who follow them, which can be actual descendants or any of us who carry a lineage of love and bravery. The river of life connects us. Grace connects us. Stories connect us. Stories of compassion and courage of famous folks like Rosa, like Ruby, as well as the unknown dead, and all those who join us in the small work, in the great work. Everything matters. How you and I live our lives matters for present time and future time. What First Parish Milton does matters, now and in the days to come. Let us live like people who know that, and who rejoice in that, and who are eager for any small chance, large or seemingly small, alone or in community, to act on that knowledge. Let's join in singing hymn number 168, One Small Step, 168. Let us join our hearts and our minds and our spirits in a time of collected prayer and meditation. Ages ago, a psalmist wrote, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, and let my cry come unto thee." And likewise, today, we speak aloud words that we want heard, words that we want to matter. We speak of our joy and sorrow and the human condition, mindful of those suffering from the war in Ukraine, mindful of women fighting for freedom in Iran, mindful of those suffering from food scarcity in Yemen and other places. We name the names of those we love and pray for their flourishing, our children, our families, our friends. We pray for ourselves and for the wisdom to choose love's path. We pray, we plead for our planet. We offer prayers in hopes that they are heard and in faith that they matter. We speak aloud so that we ourselves can hear our truth and move in truth's direction. We pray that we may become our prayers, that our every desire for love, healing, and justice reach not only your ears, O God, but enter our hearts too. Thus may we feel heard and strengthened. Thus may we be less afraid, because we are so alive. Help us to know that we are never alone, that our prayers join with those of all people everywhere. Does not any sincere prayer belong to us all? Oh, help us, God, to listen to the utterings of all people and hear in their words the beauty and struggle of all humankind, past, present, and future. May our words this lovely autumn morning join with theirs in one great murmuring, heard by you and us all, a great murmuring for peace and healing, the exult of joy, and a continuous prayer of thanksgiving. Amen.
Today's offering is a Share the Plate offering. It will be given to Fair Foods. Some of you know the work of Fair Foods. You've lent a hand and muscle to assist in the weekly food distribution. Tony Dutzek is going to come up and talk to us a little bit about Fair Food currently.
Good morning. So Fair Foods is a nonprofit organization that rescues surplus wholesale fruits and vegetables and repurposes them and distributes them to members of the community for a small nominal fee. And as some of you know, we have been volunteering at Fair Foods now at First Parish for about 6 or 7 years at this point. And it just so happens that yesterday was our monthly volunteer day. And so I have visual aids to show you what a $2 bag from Fair Foods looks like. It's actually in a bag. It's not in this lovely container. But this week we have four potatoes, a couple of bok choy, a couple of cucumbers, a couple of summer squash, 4 tomatoes, and a couple of pomegranates, all for just $2. And that's not all. Oftentimes there are other discounted and free food giveaways that occur at Fair Food sites as well, from bread to dry goods to even meat and dairy sometimes. And you can imagine if you're a family that is trying to make ends meet in these inflationary times, or if you live in a neighborhood that might have less direct access to fresh food and vegetables, what a boon and what a benefit this can be. Now, as I mentioned, we've been doing this work for 6 or 7 years, and in that time, Fair Foods has grown from an operation that was literally operating out of the back of a truck to one that now has a warehouse in Roxbury where they have cold storage and the ability to store dry goods to expand their reach. And they're serving new sites and more sites all the time. On a typical Saturday when we're volunteering in the warehouse, we'll pack about 200 bags that look like this for distribution to the community. And in addition to some of the sites that have been running in Boston for many, many years, Fair Foods is now serving sites in Lynn, in Taunton, in Brockton, and all across the Boston metropolitan area. Now, the things that make all of this work, in addition to the donations of food in the first place, are hard work and money. And if you are someone who is interested in contributing and helping the work of Fair Foods through hard work, you are in luck, because our next monthly volunteer date is going to be on November 19th. We usually start at about 8:30 in the morning. We wrap up around noon at the site in Roxbury. If you're interested in carpooling, we will happily set that up. And they basically need help in the warehouse almost every Friday and Saturday. So if that time doesn't work, let me know and I will get you connected. The other thing that you can do to support Fair Foods is to contribute. And again, you are in luck, because today our Share the Plate offering is for Fair Foods. And I really encourage you to support it generously. We have a long and very fruitful relationship with the organization, and I would love to see it grow. So please be generous. Thank you.
I have to get my new offering script. Now, you will see in the order of service the phone number that you can text to if you would like to give that way. There will also be a plate in the front and in the door going into the link. Ladies?
This is what I know. Break before the turn. Make the note low. Slow burn. You are hurt a little. You might hurt a lot. Keep it in the middle. Keep it unlocked. Head turned off and a heart tuned in. Rain coming down and you swim. You'll feel good too. You'll feel so free. Floating on the blue. green blue sea. Baby call me crazy when he calls me back. He doesn't understand why I want it like that. Head turned off and a heart tuned in. Rain coming down and you swim, swim.
In the unison dedication, may these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity.
Our closing hymn is number 108, My Life Flows On, 108. From the Jewish tradition comes this instruction: the day is short and the work is great. It is not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting the world. But neither are you free to exempt yourself. Let us take to the task that is ours to do, each in our own lives and together as a community. Let us go in peace and in hope for the world we yearn for. Should go.
Very lovely.
Yes, indeed.
Doesn't it sound like a merry-go-round?
Yeah.
How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Doing well.